Hello and welcome to today's episode with our special guest, Tiffany Churchill. She is the founder, CEO of ALLTRUEistic.com, an app you can use to meditate, to manifest. Such a beautiful soul. I'm so excited to talk to her about self-healing, meditation, and just manifesting the life you've always wanted. So with no further ado, let's get straight into it. Hello, Tiffany. What an honor to have you on the podcast. You are such an amazing woman, and I love your background, by the way, in Sedona. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Welcome. To start out, you're doing such amazing work with altruistic.com. And tell us about how you got to where you are. What led you to the work you are doing? Because it really seems like you're doing your life's work.
Yes, thank you so much. It's great to be here with you. And thank you for that question. So, like most people, our human experience normally has moments of great joy, and then for most of us, great challenges. So, my story is no different. There's been, extreme struggles throughout my life. But what I was able to do is really take those times and transmute them into incredible transformation. And I did this through awakening to my own creative power and really being able to consciously and purposely shape my life and explore and experience how meditation and intention can allow us to actually cause effects in our external experience and even in our bodies. I healed my body through meditation and intention as well. And once I had just these extraordinary experiences in my life, it led me to ask, well, what could we do together? What could we do if we united our hearts and minds around a common vision? And so I joined countless meditation, intention, and prayer groups to understand our collective impact and how we can amplify our energy together. And once again, I just experienced extraordinary miracles, miracles that would blow most people's mind if I really shared all the details of what I witnessed. And so it led me to one final question, which is, well, if small groups of us can come together and we can create such change in each other's lives, what could we do collectively? Could we then unite our hearts and minds around a common purpose for something like world peace or for something like co-contributing to a more evolved future for humanity? What could we do collectively? And so it really was the catalyst for me starting Altruistic, which is a free app in the App Store where we collectively come together, and it's a place to enhance your own life, just like I did, to consciously uplift or support another's journey, whether a healing journey or an abundance journey, or to amplify our collective impact for something greater, like for all of humanity.
Oh my God, that is so beautiful. Wow. That is so beautiful because we are so powerful. And I love that you said that you healed yourself. You know, we have to get our power back. And I think you contributing so much to that because when you go, and I heard someone just say it, I forget who, I was listening to like a podcast or something, and a person said, when you go to a doctor, you give your power away. You're saying, hey, fix me, and not saying there's never a place to go to a doctor. Of course, there are times when we need that. But first and foremost, check in with yourself, right? So I love that when you realize my body's not outside of me. It's part of who I am. It's my house. So I want to keep my house in order. I love that. When you said some of the miracles or like some of the obstacles you've overcome, what was the hardest part you've overcome where you could inspire someone else when they hear that thinking, man, if she can do it, so can I. Because at the end of the day, we're all humans. And if one person can do that, has the ability, why can't I?
Absolutely. And I think that's such a great message that every single one of us can. We all have that extraordinary power within us to, like I said, transmute those challenges into something extraordinary. And probably, I think it was in 2012, 2011, I just had a complete breakdown. My life was just in this massive struggle. I was in a toxic relationship. I was giving too much to this job and I just felt like I was dying inside. And I actually had just a breakdown in the moment. And I was driving, I just dropped my kids off to school. I was driving to the office. I pulled over on the side of the road. We were living in Central Florida, and I was just driving on this kind of remote country road. And I pulled over and I had a complete breakdown. And I just knew intuitively in my heart, in my soul, in every part of my being that I wasn't going to be able to continue. I wasn't going to be able to survive the path that my life was on at that time. And so I knew I had to make change. I had to take a different timeline, take a shift. Something had to change for me. And in that moment, I said, I know that I have to leave this relationship and I have to leave this job. And I spoke these words out loud, and it just created this momentum, like as if we were watching a movie. It'd be that magic wand that, you see that somebody's helping you create these miracles. And this momentum of miraculous events just started. And my life just completely took a whole different shift. And it was from breakdown to breakthrough. And that was the moment where everything really shifted for me. And I had experiences before that where we talk about healing, and you're so right, with our capacity to heal our body and our intuitive knowing of what our body really needs. And so I had that experience before. So I had a large foundation through meditation, through teaching yoga, through breath work and different things of what we were capable of. But the interesting thing, and what I always like to share, is we have all these tools. All of us do. Maybe different tools that we tune into, but we forget them in the times of the deepest struggle. We stop our meditation practice. We're no longer going to the yoga class. We might not be journaling. Whatever it is that you naturally turn to in our greatest moments of crisis, we often forget those. And I was in that same place, like everyone else. I forgot all my tools. And so it wasn't until I re-tapped into my own creative power that everything began to transform for me.
I love that. And it reminds me, it's so funny because we don't make time for the little things that make a huge shift in our lives. Like you were saying, I love journaling. I don't always do it, but when I don't do it, I feel the difference. I feel the difference when I don't do my yoga, when I don't do my breath work. I'm way more stressed out. I'm way more triggered by little things, just, I got to do this. It just in this constant busyness, phase where nothing happens there. Nothing happens there because it's just all like it's that fight or flight, that when we are in that state, nothing happens because all we think about is lack. All we think about is what we haven't done, beating ourselves up. How did meditation really shift for you, and what do you know for sure that meditation does, even if it's like a short meditation, right? It doesn't have to be an hour. It's all about quality. Give us a little bit of insight on how that
Yes.
shifted for you.
Meditation, I've been meditating since I was a little kid. It really is one of the greatest practices. I really believe everybody should have some type of meditation practice. And you're right, start wherever you are. Start with a minute, start with 5 minutes. But what I found for meditation to do for me is that when it quiets that internal dialogue, that voice inside of all of our heads that says you're lacking, or you can't do that, or you're not worthy enough, or all of those belief systems that are running internally without us conscious awareness. So it silences all of that, but it also allows us to have a deeper connection, whatever that might be for each individual person and each individual belief system. It allows us really to tune into that connection and something greater than ourselves, and to step outside of our current circumstances. So for me, it allows me to go into that space where basically all possibilities exist for me, because there's no friction. There's no lack there. There is just infinite abundance and infinite possibility and infinite opportunity. And so when I can get to that pure state of consciousness, and then I can create from that state instead of the environment and the circumstances that I'm living in, that's where all potentials are. And so it really is the place to awaken not only your deeper connection to everything and to each other, but that internal creative power that's just divinely inside all of us.
For someone who might say, and I hear people say it all the time, I can't meditate.
Mm.
I do, the minute I close, I can't sit down, I can't be still. And I remember for me, when I started doing yoga, did a dead body pose, I could not stand that pose. I could not stand it. And I'm like, this is the easiest pose. You're just laying on your back, relaxing, letting the body, to internalize what you've just done. But my body was just, it took me a long time. So I understand a lot of us, because we are so addicted to being busy. We're so addicted to thinking everything has to be hard and everything has to have instant gratification. Everything has to be an instant, right? Everybody wants to lose weight from in 24 hours. Everybody wants to be rich in 24 hours. And tell us like why, what recommendation would you have for someone who says, I can't meditate. I tried. I can't do it.
I say it is hard. I 100% agree, and allow your mind to say it is, and also allow all expectations to fall away. So even if you sat for a minute, that's a minute. That's a minute. And even every time that your thoughts come in and you try and go back to allowing your thoughts to float away, to just be in that pure state of presence for any amount of time is a starting point. So start there. I love when people tell me they can't meditate. I hear it all the time, even from my closest friends, even though share with them so many times all the benefits. It's too loud, it's too noisy in my house. I have kids, I have noise traffic. And I think, well, then that's the absolute most perfect place to do it. Instead of building this sacred space with the perfect, lights and candles and altars and whatever it might be, do it in the hard places, because that's what we're really doing in life. And that's really what the meditation practice is. It's about being able to reset your state in the challenging moments. It's to be able to find that calm when you're in the chaos, that peace when you're in crisis. So I really allow people, and I really strongly say it is hard. And anyone that tells you different, because our mind is full of thoughts, our mind from a neuroscience place is keeping us safe. So our alert system is up. It's up to protect us. And what you're trying to do in meditation is calm it all and saying, no, I'm safe. But again, you could be in stress, fight or flight. But the benefits of it are so incredible that I really think it should be a practice that everyone at least takes a few minutes each day to tap into.
Oh, I love your honesty because, when people, these gurus say, it's easy, just do it, it's not hard. People have a hard time with it. And so you saying, yes, it is hard. But everything that has great rewards is in the beginning not easy, right? Because we're changing. And whenever we do something that is unfamiliar, it challenges us. It challenges our ego. And I love that. I believe the word altruistic, isn't that coming from ego?
The word altruistic?
Yeah. Yeah, to let the
Yeah, so it's coming from selfless giving. So it's really about selflessly giving without an expectation of return. And that's really probably not probably, really the most transformational practice for me is when I take the attention off of myself. That's where I really find the magic and the miracles happen. So when I take the attention off of my lack or, my illness or my state or my circumstances, and you're giving to another, all of a sudden you're not thinking about those things for yourself anymore. And it's this beautiful gift. And when you give in that way energetically, it's just a reciprocal effect that comes right back to you, and you'll find that your life enhances in even more ways.
take notes, everybody. This is so powerful. I want to get back into also the journaling because a lot of people say, I don't have time, journaling, I don't know. I find it so therapeutic. What have you experienced, and why is journaling such a great tool in our toolbox?
So I use journaling in a couple of ways. One, it's a way to free write, to really tap into some of those unconscious feelings that might not be coming up for you, that you can really just free write out. I think it's a great way for expression, a great way to just move into releasing something. But I also use it to create. So in that time where we first talked about where I was feeling so challenged and had that breakdown in my life, I moved from Florida back to California. And at the time, I left everything behind. And I put my kids on the plane. I loaded up my two cats and my dog in this very small U-Haul, and I left everything. I only took their clothes and their belongings. And as I was driving across the country to start new, I stopped in each hotel room and I journaled. But I journaled out, instead of journaling like a lot of times we do, where we're journaling what might be happening in our lives. I wrote out a new life. So I wrote it out as if it was already a reality. I wrote out the house we were going to live in. I wrote out just these extraordinary experiences as if they were already fulfilled. So I used my journal as an extraordinary tool to create a new life instead of just to explore what I might be experiencing in my current circumstances. When I arrived in California, I had just $10 in my bank account, didn't even know how we were going to have a house, how we were going to survive. And everything that I wrote out in that journal, every single piece of it was fulfilled. Every single piece came into my reality in some way, most of the time completely unexpected.
Wow, that's manifesting right there. That is so powerful. I like to say that, and because we all struggle with, obviously telling ourselves we're not good enough, we don't have enough this, we don't have enough that. But that's all stories we tell ourselves, right? Okay, some of it might be a reality, a current reality of our past results, right? Whatever we've done in the past is what we're experiencing today. But if we are already telling ourselves all these stories, why not what you are saying, what you are doing? You wrote out the story that you want to live, the movie you want to be the lead actress in. It's your movie. You're the director. You're the head, the lead actress. You making that. What was the first thing that you manifested when you got to California? And you had a place, obviously, that you rented probably, or did you stay with family? Tell us a bit more about that. Because I like that. I've done that several times where I just left. And that is so brave. But it's like you following, you trusting, right? You let go, you let God. You know you have to make a change because it's hard. It's hard to leave a relationship that you used to because we're all, sometimes codependent. And then also leave your job because there was a sense of security, but you knew that you were saying you felt dead. Your soul was telling you, I can't, I cannot, we cannot do this anymore because it's soul crushing when you do the things you don't enjoy because you became here to live our best life ever. And yet we just hold back so
Absolutely.
much. Tell us about one of the first things you manifested and how it came about. I love this. It's juicy.
So that's what I loved about your story, even hearing your story, is that courage to change, that courage to take a bold move and to know that you wanted something different and to go after it. And so I had already tapped into a lot of my creative power before this experience and had manifested a lot of things. So I already had the validity of what I could create. But in this instance, we arrived in California. I had $10 in my bank account. We were moving to this very wealthy area of California because I like the school districts. So it really seemed like an impossible path that I was taking of how was I going to make this happen. But like I shared, I had already written it all out. And one great story is we didn't have a house when I arrived. We didn't even have a fork or furniture or anything. But I called my kids and I asked them what their negotiables and their non-negotiables were, things they had to have and things they could live without. And they were like 10 and 13. So for instance, my son was 10 and he just wanted a house that was great for Nerf gun wars. That was his primary thing. And so I wrote out exactly, the things that were most important to them. And miraculously, just this stream of events in ways that I could have never predicted of people showing up into my life at exactly the right time, leading me to this house in an area where it was really challenging to get a rental property. And we ended up at a house in exactly what I had written down. Every detail of it was exactly like I had written in my journal.
So amazing. Is this how you manifested? So you're now in Sedona. How did you end up going to Sedona?
So the story continues where there was just a string of everything from, again, I had started with $10 to we really created this amazing, sacred, and beautiful wealth out of that time period between that time in my life and being here. I had left, I shared a toxic relationship, and I had written out this list of, I called it the impossible list. And I thought if a man shows up like this with all these different incredible characteristics, and once again turned into writing it down and then meditating on it and being conscious about it, I said, if a man like this shows up in my life, then I will reconsider kind of my vow to being single. And sure enough, a few years later, I was married to a man that didn't just meet all those things on my impossible list, but actually exceeded them. So it wasn't just the house, it was just these strings of all kinds of incredible things that started flowing to me because I was consciously choosing, consciously creating, and consciously connected to a source greater than myself to be able to bring these incredible things into existence. And so it was a string of events that we went from the first house. And then after the first house, I thought, well, this is a great house, but let's see if I could have an ocean view. Let's tune into my creative power and see what are the boundaries of this. So we moved into the next house, which was exactly that I wrote down, and then the third house, which is exactly that I wrote down, and then finally wrote down, to say, okay, I just would choose to stop renting and start owning. And so we ended up in Sedona, in the house that we're in now, and again, exactly as I had created it intentionally and purposefully.
It is so powerful. And I know some people might be like, that's impossible because you can't just write something down and manifest it. But you can, because when you're actually allowing yourself to let go, and I'm working on a program right now too about abundance. And it's amazing how we're so hardwired to think everything is going to be hard and everything has to have like all these systems in place and strategies in place. And, no, it's not that hard, but it's so hard to unlearn that. Right. And I love that you made an impossible list and made it possible. So tell us, where did you meet your husband? I love knowing these stories because they're so funny sometimes and so serendipitous at the same time.
Yeah, so I want to go back to one thing you said. And one of the key words you said in that is we're so hardwired. And that's so true. We don't realize that our belief systems and the things that we're hardwired to and the patterns that we've had for our whole life are what are actually bringing into our life the experiences that we're having. And so it's taking that deep dive into what are we hardwired for, and then reprogramming that to say, okay, if I don't like this aspects of my life, I'd like to create something different. And so I have to rewire myself, reprogram myself, and create new patterns to align with this new experience that I would like to have. And so I think that phrase that you just said, hardwired, is such a key for people to understand that we are not, manifesting makes it seem like something we're going to attempt to do, something we're going to try to do. But instead, really what it is we're doing it in every moment in our life already, because the world is responding to us already. So it's already responding to those things, like you said, that we're hardwired for. So why not create new programs, new patterns, new belief systems, only these aligned with what you would like to bring in. So instead of a belief system of lack, let's bring into a belief system of abundance and align to that and allow that to start showing up into our lives instead of the lack that we might have been programmed for before.
It is true because we are who we are is what we attract, right? It's like my words, my how I show up. Do I show up like this, kind of like, all shy and like body language, right? Versus like just shoulders, here I am, world. I'm ready. I'm ready to receive all the good. I also think that a lot of people feel guilty. They feel guilty when they suddenly when all is good, they're like, how could everything be so good? That saying like, oh, it's too good to be true. No, maybe it is just good. It's true. It's good and it's true. There's a certain guilt because the world we live in, because of what we see. And it's funny also, what you tune into is so important, because now I see just funny stuff on my Instagram feed. I see like, positivity, because once you like program yourself to that, it just shows up everywhere. The signs are everywhere, It's so interesting. So I think that people that feel guilty or oh, I shouldn't feel this good because someone else doesn't, by you shining light, you make everything brighter. You shine light on other
Yeah.
people as well, So you're doing everyone a favor by being that light, by being uplifting, versus just, it's so easy to be dramatic because the news likes drama, the in general media loves drama, right? You go on YouTube, like these headlines, it's always this clickbait of like, the world is going down. Instead, just focus on what you want and then put your energy into that.
Yes. And I was just actually you're so right, where people think you can't have it all, or those sayings that it's too good to be true, or you can't have your cake and eat it too. I mean, who said that stuff? Who made that up? Who planted that even into our belief system? So now that we believe it. I was just at this workshop here in Sedona, and it was a beautiful man, and he was talking about manifesting. And he said, is anybody here really creating the life that you want in all areas of your life? And I raised my hand, and maybe 4 or 5 of us did. And he said, that's not possible. Put your hands down, because there's no way you're creating in every area of your life. And I thought, well, that's a false belief system in and of itself, because why not? Why would it only be that I could shift from maybe lack to abundance and only have that, but I have to have illness in my body? Why would I have to be missing anything in any area? Because when you're truly connected to that creatorship within, why would there be any limitation to it? Why couldn't we have our cake and eat it too? It just doesn't make any sense.
It's so true. I used to think that I was in a seminar a long time ago, and it was funny. I always had the money issues, right? And then, but this girl, she had the relationship. She never could find. I'm like, oh my God, we're like, I could teach you everything about relationships because I have no problem building beautiful relationships, but with money. And she's like, yeah, it just money. It just I got money, yeah, but I can't, for whatever reason, I can't find that guy or have that beautiful relationship. So it's funny. And then we think, okay, I'm good at this, but I'm not good at that. And we create this imbalance. We just embellish maybe our imbalances. Of course, in life, things happen. But if something bad happens to you right now, you're in a place where you can handle it. The way you react is completely different. You're not going to play the victim. You're going to be like, all right, didn't expect that. Let's handle it. And then move on.
Yes. Yes. And you're so right. The things that I think we're lacking the most. So, most people have one big one. It might be for some people, relationships. For other people, it might be health. For other people, it might be abundance and money. So a lot of people have that one thing because that's the thing that you're spending the most time thinking about. So I lived in lack for a long time and I had a challenging belief system. It took me years to address my belief system with finances before I started seeing abundance flowing into me. So I can completely understand. And the moments that your body, it might not be in complete health, it's hard to live in pain, but then live in this false reality that you're in perfect health. It's hard to live in lack and somebody to tell you, but you're supposed to live as if you're in abundance and you're looking at your bank account and your bills and you're saying, well, how do I pay this? Or somebody in a relationship that really just so much wants to be in that loving relationship. So when they're coming home and they're not in it, that's their central focus. So those are the hardest things because those are the things we're giving the most attention to on a daily basis. And so a lot of people do have kind of that one area. I usually suggest, and this is what happened for me anyway, is to find the things you can believe in so you can start getting evidence. So find the smaller things that you can start believing in. So if money is the challenge, look at another area or do something small that you can find believability in. Because I believe when we can tap into our creative power and our ability to shape our experiences, then when the big things happen, then if cancer shows up in your life or something like that, you've built the validity in your power to say, it's okay, I've got this. But if we don't have that validity and that evidence first, then those big things, we don't know that we can shift or shape them, and it's too big.
You blow my mind. Like you see, everything you're saying is so gold. It is because when you focus on the lack, you create more lack, law of attraction. And that's whether you believe in the law of attraction, or not. It's just the way it is, law of gravity, right? If something falls, it doesn't matter if it's precious or if it doesn't mean anything. It just falls. It's just the law. Wow. How important do you feel? Because I really love the minimalist lifestyle, right? Like, how important do you feel it is to keep your space clean and to make space for you? Because you also mentioned creativity, and I feel sometimes people say, I'm not creative. I'm not creative. And I love to tell them, yes, you are. Because every time, even when you go on a road trip and you figure out where to go, that's kind of being creative. Like, where am I going to stop to eat? Where am I going to stop and stay? Like, how do you feel about that when it comes to creating space for you and being creative and really tapping into maybe you don't know what lights you up anymore because you've been so caught up in this 9 to 5 that you think you have to provide for your family. But how can you make that shift to go from, all right, I want to do what actually lights me up, like what you were doing when you just said enough. I want to do what I love to do, and also what makes an impact in the world, because what you're doing is huge. That brings so much light into the world.
Thank you for that. And I love how you're sharing with people that they are creative. You're in that way building new belief systems for them because this is what they've been told is these things aren't creative. We have this idea of creativity being painting or writing, but they're not seeing these moments as creative. And so you're shifting that belief system in that for them. And that's really beautiful. And so I feel that we are, these incredible intuitive beings. And when we tap into our hearts, and when we're not filled with the chaos around us in our environments or in the world, and we can really just tap into ourselves, our hearts know the way. And it's really listening. And I find that, your heart knows the way, your intuition knows the way, and you have two choices. You can either follow it or you can wait to follow it. And it's some way it's going to present itself. And sometimes that's how the bad things show up for us, right? The bad things are really just redirecting our past because you're saying, I don't love this. I had this experience. I didn't love this 9 to 5 job. And every day I was getting up saying, I don't love this job. I don't love this job. Well, I got released from the job. And, it seemed like the worst thing that ever happened to me in the moment because now all of a sudden I wasn't expecting for them to have these cuts and I no longer had a job, but it was one of the greatest blessings. And so I was putting out that energy the whole time that I didn't want this job. I didn't want this job. And then when the job was taken away from me, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have this job. And so in the moment of those struggles, you're thinking it's the worst until you can look back and go, oh, wait, that was the greatest thing. So we're always putting out that energy, right? Our heart is always really sharing to us what we do want to experience in the direction we do want to go. It's just a matter of being courageous, of actually starting to listen and tune in and then following that path, which is really hard. It's really hard to step outside your comfort zone and move into that place of the unknown.
It is. It really is. And it's funny, for some people, for example, for me, I feel so uncomfortable when I'm comfortable, when I'm too comfortable. Then I feel like, oh
Mm.
my God, this is like this, I gotta stretch myself or I gotta do something that's a bit more exciting, but more interesting. So yeah, don't be afraid. And it will feel weird because our nervous system is, our ego and our brain, it's all trained to do certain things and be used to certain routines and habits, and suddenly you're changing them. So yes, you might feel a little anxious, you might feel a little scared because suddenly your nervous system's going, whoa, whoa, no, 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 this is not safe, we don't know. The $100,000, no, 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 not us, we can't make that happen. Others can. Then ask yourself, why can others and I can't, right? What's the difference? Or being in complete health, being in great shape, when if others can do it, why can't I? Right? I love that so much. You said that you went to a seminar, and I love how you are already so established and so successful. How important is it to go and always learn from other people and have a mentor and constantly, have this attitude of like the beginner's mind, kind of, where of course meditation, of course manifestation, but isn't it amazing when we go and we learn, there's always more to learn and explore. Tell us about how important it is for you to stay in touch with people in the community, but also to always learn and grow.
For me, in my personality, I love to learn and grow. So I'm absorbing, 20 books at a time, as much information as I can get, and researching as much as I can. And yet at the same time in meditation, we can tap in and find our own innate answers. So it's not always about the external experiences. A lot of times it's also balancing that with tapping in and going through that information that will come to you. But I really find continuing to grow. I don't think that we are, I don't think enlightenment, for instance, to give an example, is a destination that we achieve, that we're there and it's a permanent state of being. It's a growth pattern, and we all have things we're still overcoming or still working through, or life is a roller coaster where it's those up and downs. And so you're learning in every moment how to have the lows not go so lows and have to have the highs higher, so that you can, really tap into on a greater level of the gratitude, the joy, the being in awe of life, and to self-correct when you're not in those places. And that can be self-correct again through meditation, or it can be self-correct from finding somebody else to assist you in that moment. And so I don't think any of us are there. We're never going to have all the knowledge. We're never going to have all the answers. We're never going to have all the experiences. And I also think that information comes at different levels of where we are. So you could read a book and then you could read it 10 years later, and you'll get something different a lot of times out of it because the wording hasn't changed, but you've changed. And so it's the same way, I think, when we're growing and learning from others and getting those mentors. As I grow, I'm getting different information that can awaken something inside me that I might need at that time.
Love that. Because that's what they say in yoga. It takes a lot of time, and we all have that one area, that one stretch, or that one pose that is just like always a little challenging. And when something is challenging, that just means we just got to keep working on it.
Right. Or so it's a flow. Sometimes you might be good at the balancing poses. Sometimes you might be better at the strength poses, and then you've gotten away from the balancing poses. So you need to return because your balance and your focus isn't as good at that moment. And so it's this beautiful ebb and flow of what do I need right now in my life? And how can I improve and how can I enhance all areas of my life? And what information do I need at that time? So you're right. Yoga is a beautiful analogy for that.
And we're different every day. Some days we feel completely energized and yes, we're ready to go. And some days it's like, oh God, yoga. I don't want to do any of that right now. I did this morning. I was like, oh God, what happened? Why am I suddenly not? I'm like, no, just listen to your body, but still push yourself a little bit, right? What are some of your favorite places that you've visited that really left a huge impact on you?
Peru is one of the places where my heart is always in. I loved Bali, but I loved it more for the experience that I personally had. I met with some extraordinary healers in Bali. And so it was the interactions with the people that made it, fulfilled my heart so much. But so much of our experiences are about the memories that we recreate, the people that we're with, or the people that we meet and experience. I had an extraordinary trip to Iceland that really surprised me and met really beautiful people there. I shared with you, my daughter lives in Berlin. And so traveling to Germany, I have friends in Germany. So I really thought I would love the country, but I was just really more in shock with Berlin on how much I liked it, not really anticipating, not really giving it maybe a lot of thought, thinking that I was somewhere high on my list. And I really had a phenomenal time in Germany. So I can't say that I've ever had a bad experience traveling. It just opens this up in so many different ways.
So expanding. I love that so much because it's so inspiring. New cultures, new people, new places to see. And it just blows my mind sometimes to think, oh, wow, what happened here like 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, Um, and Europe is more, sadly, the US tears a lot down and rebuilds, which I don't like because I feel like New York City, I love New York so much. And I'm like, man, when I first moved there, all these buildings are gone now. And I'm like, this is history that you just tore down. No, don't do that, because I mean, the kids nowadays, they don't even know anymore how cool things were, But in Europe, they some of the buildings are protected, so they can't even really mess with them, which I actually like. I like when I see something that is like from the 1400s or the 1300s. In Germany, you find some of those churches and places and even castles. It's just incredible, so incredible. What is one of your pet peeves?
Oh my, but this is interesting because I was just having a conversation yesterday with my husband. I had read this book and I can't tell you the name of it right now, but it was talking about our communication and leadership style. And it had these beautiful ways of a maven, a colonel, a professor, and I was a seer. And it was really explaining in what I didn't realize was I knew that it was a pet peeve, but I didn't really know why. So it was explaining how in my communication, my leadership style, I am future oriented. And so I really like to create these grand visions and lead people to their potential. I see potential in people and I want to guide them to living their full potential. I mean, that's what I'm doing with my app. That's what I do with my work. That's what I do with life, is really wanting people to tap into their power so that they can live these extraordinary lives, because I feel so many people are suffering and I see the suffering in the world. And I think so much of it is unnecessary. And so I think that I wouldn't say it's a pet peeve, but it did express to me like kind of the shadow side of when I see people not living into the potential, that it's hard on me, because I see them as so much more than they are. And so it makes it challenging for me to witness that there are these extraordinary beings and they just aren't seeing it and they're living lives that aren't fulfilling them up, when I live in awe of life. Like it really is this extraordinary gift. And I wish they could sometimes see themselves and see the world as I do. And, we get caught up in the world being in chaos and all the negative things that are going on, but we forget to see the beauty of just being alive and how extraordinary our human bodies are and life is. And so that sometimes is what I would say. I don't know if I would call it my pet peeve, but the shadow side that I need to look at and be able to accept that so many people are where they are, even though I can see them as so much more beautiful than they see themselves.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah, I actually it's funny because I when I go on my walks, I do like little videos that I later post on TikTok, and I was talking about the pet peeve. I was asking people what their pet peeves are, and then I said what mine is. Mine is usually when people don't finish things, and it's actually like if they say, we're gonna do something, and then they kind of break their promise. And to me, it feels pet peeves are kind of a self reflection because I am often not finishing my songs, and so it frustrates me, and it's easier to be to be mad at someone else when they don't do that or they don't hold their end of the bargain. Which I'm good at. If I promise you something, I'll keep my promise, but I often don't keep the promise to myself. And I think when we see something in someone else that we know we're still kind of struggling with, it's a little bit of a self-reflection, or you knowing that I've built it, you can do it, but then they don't, and you just want to kind of take them and just pull them out of that vortex that they're in into the right vortex, and you are in Sedona, so that brought me to that vortex. I love Sedona so much. I want to come back. It's beautiful there. But thank you for sharing that, because that is, I think people may at least consider the possibility, right? That life can be amazing and it does not have to be a struggle. And
Or there can be more amazing. So there might be struggles. It's where our human existence is full of contrast, and that allows us to grow. But yet there can be so many more amazing moments that might be missing.
especially like with all the political climate going on, people just keep just posting all this stuff and their concerns and their worries. I'm like, why are you spreading fear and hate when instead just do something that actually matters? If you're really that concerned, go form something, go create a petition. I don't know, do something that is actually contributing. And I also think that it's so much more powerful when you put something, you make it positive, because I may not have control over who is running a country or who is, a war going on somewhere that I don't have any control over, but I can control how I deal with my feelings about that. Maybe I can write a little poem, or I can make a painting, or I could donate. I could do something to kind of contribute in a positive way and make it a positive experience. Like you were saying, there's just already so much darkness that let's spread the light. We don't need to, create more because we are all energy. What you were saying, and like imagine the power of prayer and the power of seeing something positive has the same effect as people just constantly doom and gloom. Why? Because none of us want that. None of us want to create more of that. So I love that.
Absolutely. And that's really where my passion lies, is that where is our collective energy going? And so, yes, people are very political, people are very divided. There's a lot of chaos in the world, and our attention is more focused than ever before. I was just talking to a friend of mine, and we were sharing how when we grew up, our families would come home and watch the 6 o'clock news. They'd work all day, they'd watch the news. That was all the news they saw, or maybe read the paper in the morning, but their day wasn't filled with it. And now we go on social media, we talk to everybody who's talking about it, people that weren't even involved in politics. And so it's just part of our everyday lives, and there's no way to get around it. But it really got concerning for me, this society built with fear, and how we are so tuned into all that's happening. So if I had these experiences where I've created so much in my life, and then I've witnessed all these different intention and meditation groups and seen all these miracles, I was watching as I would scroll through X. I was watching all the attention we're collectively giving to all these things we don't want to experience. And so I'm thinking, here we are we creating this? Is our collective awareness helping to create this? So if we're all focused in on a fearful future, are we creating a collective future to be fearful of? And yet I didn't have anywhere to then take my attention and start building what I did want to experience, start building and co-creating a more evolved future for humanity, start building and creating freedom for all, start building and creating abundance for people instead of our financial suffering. I didn't have any place to start giving my attention to that, and to build a community that would start to give their attention with me so that we could amplify it. And that's why I built a community, to be able to do that. So we could stop giving all of our attention to what we don't want. One story I like to share about this is there's a Disney movie, it's called Tomorrowland, and the world is the world is ending in this movie. And at the very end of the movie, they find out that the world is ending, not because the world's really ending, but because of society's belief that the world is ending. And so that's such a powerful message, I think, to us, because again, what are we giving our attention to collectively? And what if we just all started shifting? So great, pay attention if you feel you need to be tapped in and tuned into what's going on, completely understand. But then balance that and say, how can I join something? How can I find an intention group? How can I find a meditation group? How can I join this app? Whatever it might be for you, so that you can also start contributing to the world we want. And one way, even is you expressed your creativity, is through even tapping into that creativity. If you're living a life of fear or stress, you're really giving and projecting out to the whole that same thing. So taking the time to elevate yourself, and then you're projecting out to the whole and uplifting the whole with joy, with compassion, with love, with gratitude, and all these other things. And your own light is then affecting all of humanity.
Oh, God, so powerful. Absolutely. What are some of your, I mean, I love the field you are in. There's quite a few amazing people. Who are like some of your top people that you like to listen to, like Joe Dispenza, for example, people like that really contribute to this movement. I don't even want to call it movement, but we're shifting, right? The world is shifting. I think we're in a little bit of a dark phase still, but we are moving out of the darkness because we're in the Aquarian age, and the truth is coming out. Everything is more transparent, which can be a little bit shocking and but also revealing. But we know that, what you were saying earlier, when you went through all this darkness and you had your little breakdown, that you knew that, okay, I'm going to shed it, I'm going to face it, I'm going to deal with it, and I'm going to get through it, because every breakdown has a breakthrough, right? If we allow it to be. What are some of the people that inspired you?
So with that breakdown and that breakthrough, I heard an astrologist actually a couple of years ago, before it really felt like our world was going into chaos, and I thought she expressed it really well. And before anything, where we really saw so much chaos, she said the if you lift a rug, you're going to see dirt. But you're never going to clean that dirt out until you lift that rug. So, there's a lot of systems in our world that need to be rebuilt, but how can we rebuild them until we really see what's there, the dirt under the rug? So we have to see the dirt to be able to sweep it away and build something new. And I think that's the time that we're in. We're definitely in chaos. It's definitely hard. It's hard on everyone. But how can we build new systems if we didn't see that they needed to be broken down? We were all living so comfortably in our societies. We were just in that life where people are living mediocrity. So there's corruption, there's all these things happening, but you're just kind of going through it because you're comfortable. And we wouldn't have forced change until we were in a position to have to change. And I think that's what we're on. And I think that we have to go through to have the other side of such light. And so to answer your question, Auntie, there's just such a long list. I'm always finding new teachers that inspire me. A lot of teachers from the past that I've just been studying for so long, whose work was really an inspiration. There's definitely extraordinary teachers out in the world, both known like Dr. Joe Dispenza. I've been to his workshops. He's incredible, spreading such an amazing message, awakening people and tuning them into their power. To a lot of teachers that have come into my life who aren't known, spiritual teachers that I've worked with where they haven't published books, so they're not holding workshops, but have had massive impressions in my life.
How did you find them?
Synchronistically, actually, one of my spiritual teachers that had really the most amazing impression on my life. I was teaching yoga at the time, and I was going to a yoga festival in LA, and I had planned out my whole day. So I knew all the people I wanted to see and all the lectures. And I had before then, I had been meditating a lot, wanting a spiritual teacher, really to be able to advance with a mentor, with somebody who could assist me to grow. And so I was putting all this energy out there for having a teacher show up into my life. And I was walking with this full planned out schedule, and I walked by this man who was doing just a workshop in this one room, and he wasn't on my schedule at all. And this is one of the reasons you kind of have to allow more space. Like you were talking at one place, about having kind of minimalistic and having that space. Well, we have to have that in our lives, not just our surroundings. And so I was walking by this man, and I thought, I'm supposed to listen to him. And I think I was going to go and hear Dr. Wayne Dyer. who I loved at, at the time. And I said, I'm not going to listen to Dr. Dar. I'm going to go and listen to this man. So I sat and I listened to him, and I kind of forgot. And then I was in this bookstore, this spiritual bookstore, maybe a month later, and I was looking for some specific book that I had in mind. And all of a sudden, this book literally drops off the shelf at my feet. And I pick it up, and it was that speaker. I instantly recognizes his name that I had seen in the yoga studio, in the yoga conference. And I knew that this is somebody I had to get in touch with. And he ended up being an extremely important part of my life.
Oh, wow. Do you remember his name?
Yes, but I don't think that he is, his first name is Stephen, and I think he's moved away and is no longer
Oh.
working with students and is living just, more of a quiet, peaceful life on his own. But he was one of the first people in my life that started bringing the awareness to, we talked about it kind of as a theme throughout this, those limitations that are in our mind and in our programming, right? And he was the first person that really had me look at that voice inside my head and say, who is doing the talking? Who is that that's giving that like unworthiness? Who's saying that you can't do it? And if you can observe that voice from somewhere else, then who is the observer and who is the voice? And it really started the process of allowing me to see that these voices in our head telling us what we can and can't do, they're not the part of us that's ultimately, this higher self, this other mind that is connected to everything and can see our potential. And so it allows me now to see and to recognize those beliefs that aren't serving me anymore from a different state, from a different consciousness.
I mean, just the fact that when you started on your journey, when you were driving, you packed up everything and you left everything behind and you started writing. What a self-empowering move, and how brave to just say to yourself, you know what? I'm not going to believe what I'm seeing right now. This is my current reality, but I'm just going to write out what I want. And I'm just going to believe that this is what's going to happen because I deserve it. How powerful. That is so powerful. And I want everyone to take notes with that and apply that, because the thing is, right, you could say, nah, I don't believe it, but it's worth a try. Right? What do you have to lose? If you tell yourself stories anyway, if you're spending time complaining about the current climate you live in or whatever it may be, or your relationship, you're unhappy, and like, why not spend the time being productive, doing something that could actually benefit you, versus doing something when people oftentimes, when you're complaining, when you gossiping, you're just not really doing anything that's contributing anything. And it's not just about the world, it's about yourself, right? It doesn't make you feel good. I mean, maybe it does, because people are addicted to drama sometimes, and stress and cortisol, right? But why not make that, turn it around and make it something more positive? And that does not mean this they call it like the toxic positivity, right? It's, oh, everything is great, blah blah blah. No, you can still, like, sometimes it's okay to be angry and let it out. That's why I love Kundalini yoga. We have this fist of anger, and it's just good to do, and they actually want you to, you're supposed to get angry, right, for like 3 minutes, and then you just release it. So of course we want to release old energy and traumas, but they don't have to become a part of us for the rest of our lives.
Yes, they don't have to live in our story. And that was one of the choices I made when I had that breakdown. I could have stayed in fight or flight. I was living in fight or flight. I was living in survival. Well, how long do you want to live like that? But how many of us are actually really, truly still doing that? We're doing that as a society right now. We're just living in survival and fight or flight. But we can make the conscious choice. What do you want to experience? And let's start bringing that out. And how can I start changing my story and telling myself that story instead of this story? But what you're saying and is so true in the sense that those lower emotions, our stress, our complaining, the dramas that we live in, those are easier for us to carry. How many people do you know that are living a day in joy? How many people do you know that can spend a full day in gratitude? But how many people do you know that can live in stress? How many people that you know can spend a lifetime there? And so those lower energies are easier for us to sustain. It takes great work to try and live in joy, to live in gratitude, to live in a state of awe. That takes work. And so most of us, it's easier to get back. My husband, somebody cut him off in traffic yesterday. He was upset. So he got cut off. And I said, well, how long do you want to live in this? Do you want to carry this the rest of your day? Because some people can carry it for years, right? So do you want to carry this for the rest of your day, or do you want to try and do the work right now to let it go? He wasn't exactly happy with me for completely saying that, because he wanted to live in that for a little bit longer than I was allowing him to. But it's true. How long do you want to live in that? Because the longer you're going to stay in that, you're just going to bring more things into your life that are going to match that. So do you want to stay in this stress? Do you want to contribute that emotion to the world? Do you want to contribute more of that stress? Or do you want to do the work to try and get out of it, at least to a neutral ground? And then you're contributing that energy, not to just yourself, not just to what comes into the world, but to the rest of the world. So you're not contributing any more fear or anger. We just don't need more of that in the world.
I love when you said at least neutral, because I listen to Esther and Jerry Hicks a lot, like the Abraham. And I love when she says, yeah, you don't have to go from being sad, heartbroken to, oh, I'm happy and so top of the world. But at least you could let that negative energy become neutral, where you at least, and that's where meditation and breath work is so important, right? And helpful, because then we can at least be, okay, I'm not as sad anymore. I'm not as heartbroken. And also, these feelings are valid. It's okay. Because we don't want to
Yes.
act like, yeah, you don't have to feel those feelings. Of course, if somebody passes away, you're sad and you should grieve. That's a very normal feeling. And I also feel that in our current society, everything has a name, HD, ADHD, and this and that, and we have a pill for everything. You don't need a pill for everything, because we're humans. We're meant to sometimes be stressed out. We're meant to sometimes be distracted, because we live in a very busy world. That does not mean you need a pill for it. It doesn't mean you
Yeah.
need therapy for it. The therapy could be you writing your journal. The therapy could be you just spending 10 minutes meditating instead of medicating, right? Because to me, meditation is my medication. Don't you agree that we've become so, everything has become a name and everything is a dis-ease, when yes, it is a dis-ease. We're not being at ease at the moment, but it doesn't have to become. And another thing you said that's so important is you said we are all addicted to stress and it's so much easier. Is that kind of strange that we are so comfortable living in a stress mode when we know that stress is one of the worst things for our health?
Yes.
Laughing, being out in nature, having, like you said, like having a whole full day of just laughing, being in joy. We so easily, and I remember catching myself too, thinking of like, oh, what if this, especially in relationships, right? When you first get in a relationship and you're like, what's he doing? Blah, blah. And you make up all these stories in your head, and it's like, who cares? Because there's certain things we have no control over, which is other people. So if that other person does something that you don't like, well, guess what? No matter how many times you tell them, they don't care, because they're gonna do what they do. Not saying when you're together, right? Like there's boundaries and there's communication, but I think a lot of us want to always control everything and everybody when the only thing you can control is you, and we have a hard enough time to controlling our own thoughts. So who are we trying to control other people? But it's easier, right, to trying to control someone else, because then you are not holding yourself responsible.
Right. And from a neuroscience perspective, I mean, our mind wants to keep in control because it's keeping us safe. So the more the mind can control our environment, the more it can keep us safe. And so, the more we can step out of that and make it uncomfortable, make our bodies, and that's even part of meditation. You're not comfortable because your mind is not in a comfortable position. Your body's not in a comfortable position. So you're pushing it to limits it's not comfortable in. And when you can keep pushing it to limits and you're not comfortable in a controlled environment, like in meditation, what can you do in life? And one thing I do want to say about, you were talking about, feeling grief and being able to feel those emotions and not feel like you have to go from grief and joy. And I do think that's so important. I think the difference is this idea of that you have to jump from grief to something like joy. And that's what you need to, reach. And that's just too much. I think more of the important thing is to say, feel the grief, but don't let it get trapped. As you know, with Kundalini, it's that trapped energy within our body. And so it's being able to move that energy. It's how can I transmute this grief? How can I move from a state of depression? How can I move from even anger or stress, but not get it stuck so that it becomes a way of being? And I think that's what's so important, to allow the emotion, to even talking about control, to surrender to it, to accept that you're in a state of it. I am in this state. I am grieving. I don't have any pressure. I don't have any need to jump to joy. I can be in this state, but I don't have to live here forever. And I don't have to internalize this as an energy, as an emotion that's going to be trapped in my body, that then can cause disease or something else because it was never transmuted.
I have to say, surrender has become one of my favorite words this year, because surrender, people think it's just like giving up, but it's really what you are saying, just allowing yourself, being in the flow, not constantly forcing things. Because for me, I'm used to always being busy, doing. My friends are like, you're so ambitious and you're always doing. And I'm like, it's not a good thing. It's not always a good thing. It doesn't mean I'm always productive, So I'm working on that. That's definitely a challenge for me still. But I love that so much. I could talk to you forever. You're such a beautiful soul and being, and there's just so much. I can feel the love through the screen, It's just so beautiful. I ask everybody on my podcast what their favorite beverage is, especially like a morning beverage. Like, do you prefer coffee? Do you do tea? What is your get up, get going drink?
I usually coffee. I go through phases where I give coffee up and it's tea, but really it's coffee. It's that placebo of effect of the smell and the knowingness that it's waiting for you, and that idea that it starts your day. So coffee.
With or without cream?
That changes. That depends on where I'm at. I do both.
Okay.
So a really good quality coffee that you just love. It's nothing better than just a black cup of really good coffee. But if I don't have that, then with some cream. So it's for me, it's not habit. It changes so that I can change. So I don't get up and face the day exactly the same way every day. It could be coffee with cream, and then the next day black, and the next day tea. But yeah, that smell of coffee in the morning is definitely what wakes me up.
Oh, it's something about coffee. I tried giving it up too, but coffee is actually not bad for us if you don't drink too much. But same thing, I love black coffee. But I don't drink black coffee, but dark coffee with my with my collagen powder, chocolate flavored.
And I haven't had the chocolate flavor. I do collagen, but I have to try that chocolate flavor. That sounds wonderful.
It tastes so good. It's so good. And then a little bit of cinnamon. I'm addicted to cinnamon. Like I could put cinnamon in everything. Thank you so much for the conversation. If there's one last thing you would give advice to anyone who is just, maybe in a phase in their lives. Oh, do you want to share where you met your husband, or should we not? We forgot.
Yeah, I met my husband really synchronistically. Actually, I met my husband online in a dating app. And a funny story with it is my daughter, she was 13 at the time, and I was a single mom. We were in a new location, and she came to me and she said, "I think you should date." And I was working so much that dating was just not in my reality. And I told you I wrote that list, so I just didn't really have a lot of ambition to even date. But I thought adult conversation would be nice, an adult dinner, because it was just the kids and I. And so we met online against all odds. And I really think that it has a high possibility. I know a lot of people, that's the only way they date now. I think there is beauty in that organic meeting, that I think has gotten lost in our society, where you're out at a grocery store, out somewhere, and you meet somebody. But we met online, and it was just an amazing, almost instant connection that I hadn't really been impressed or really seen that there was potential for anybody until I met him. And then it was just like almost a knowing. And like I said, I created this list of characteristics, which was an extraordinary long list that really felt like nobody could ever meet. And he not only met it, he exceeded it to things I hadn't even ever thought about. And so he's just an extraordinary human.
That is so awesome. I have another friend. She and her husband, they're married now. She's about to get her second child. They met online. And same thing, they almost instantly, like, it clicked completely, and they're happily married. They work together, and I'm like, that is so freaking awesome. Everybody has different experiences, but I think what you did was completely, you were open to it. First of all, because you made that list, you're like, what do I have to lose? If nothing else, just gonna have a nice conversation with somebody. And that you just being open to it, attracted, that's so juicy. That's awesome.
Yeah,
um
and I will say one piece of advice with that. I always tell people if I could find somebody, you say I was open, but my husband will tell you I was the most closed off person he's ever dated, and it was a massive challenge. So I think if I was that closed off, and we talk about how important it is to surrender and all of these things, well, if I could find somebody like that, anybody that's really looking for a relationship, it can fully exist for you. Because if I could find this man and I was this closed off to love and such a challenge to even date, anybody can do it.
Wow. I love that you say that, because I know that sometimes I know quite a few people who are just in a relationship because of money, and they don't even talk anymore. And I'm like, what are you doing? Well, it is what it is. No, it's not, because you're not being happy. So that's number one. Number two, this codependence of saying that I need to be with that person because financially I can't do it on my own. Yes, you can. There is always a way, but you have to first let go, because the universe can't give you anything new if you're still holding on to the old, right? That's a big
Yes.
one.
And that's when I left Florida. I stayed for a similar reason of how was I going to take care of my two children on my own. And I didn't, like I said, I gave up the bank accounts, I gave up the house, I gave up all the furniture. I showed up with $10 and not knowing, I had no idea how I was going to support my children, myself. And so the universe can shift your circumstances instantaneously. We can look at our situation and think it's just impossible. And I can tell you it can happen fast, and nothing is impossible. It can absolutely transform your life at any time. I believe that you make the conscious decision to do so.
Amazing. I took a self-help seminar a long time ago, and one of the things that always stuck with me, they were saying 100% intention, 0% mechanism. When you really put something out there, you do not have to worry about how. Because we get so
No.
caught up in how am I going to get the money? How am I going to get an apartment? How am I going to get this? Don't worry about it. What do you want? And trust
Yes.
what you are doing. You trust it. You're like, you know what? I'm going to let it all go. I'm done. This is what
Yes.
matters.
The only thing that I experienced that I would change is I wouldn't have let myself get so far down
Right.
into that complete breakthrough. And what you see that a lot where people, they when they're in disease is when they start to change their life. I was in a breakdown, so that's when I changed. You don't have to get to that place. You can change now. And as for them staying for the money and the how is it going to happen, when I was leaving, my mind had all this thing. How are you going to do this? This is impossible. How are you ever going to do this? But things happen in the most incredible ways. So you're right. It's that trust. It's that surrender. It's that faith. And I still think it's that conscious decision in starting to purposely say, what would I like to experience?
And I always like to think, I always ask myself, what's the worst that could happen? Because a lot of people are scared, right? And then just write it down. What are you actually scared of? What's the worst thing that could actually happen? You're going to stay in your car for a minute? If that's it, even if that was the worst thing, you still have a car. I know it's like really, the extreme, but it is, you still have a car. And maybe you have some friends, but there's always a way. If there's a will, there's a way. And yeah, that 100% intention, 0% mechanism, because we don't want to believe that. We don't want to think that we don't have to work that hard. We don't have to do as much action. Yes, we have to take action, but inspired action. And action
Yes.
that comes from here, not from here, where I have to do this because society told me to.
I have one story. I don't know how much time you have, but one story on this where I had started a new business and I really needed to make a certain amount of money, which was a really good income. And I didn't know, I hadn't put the website up. I hadn't advertised. I hadn't really done anything. And I just kind of started it in motion. And I went out and I started in my journal and I wrote it out, exactly the client that I wanted, exactly the amount of money that I needed. I went out and I meditated, and usually I write it and then I have a picture that represents that. And I bring that image into my mind. And when I meditate to create it and I feel it. And so I did this and I experienced this client exactly as I wanted. I got up from my meditation and went to my computer to check my email before I went and got ready for the day. And in my email was an offer from a client that I could have never told you would ever contact me. It was somebody I had known years and years in the past. I didn't even know they remembered my name. And while I was meditating, this person was sending me an email making me the exact offer that I was sitting out in my chair meditating on. And so this is what I say in the way that you don't know, you could not know, you could say, I have to stay in this relationship for the money. But yet I'm saying when you consciously decide to change and to bring something different into your life, and you can hold that in your mind and your heart and just open yourself up to what might come in an unexpected way. You could have asked me for 10 years who would be my first client. Not ever would I brought up this person, ever could I have predicted it, because you can't always predict how things are going to show up for you. And so it's just going and consciously making a decision and creating it in your mind and heart, and then having that belief and that trust and that faith, and then things show up in amazing ways.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you shared that story. That is powerful. I'm going to do that. I love that. I so love that because, again, when we start a new business, especially, we've been taught that it takes 3 years for your business to take off. Again, who taught us all this, right? And
you have to have 100,000 followers on Instagram, yes. And all these things that we have to do now.
Yeah. You got to be busy 24/7. Don't even sleep, because you got to hustle. And then you just, because I've operated from that for so long too. The constant outcome in my mind, but that's not where you should come from. Because if I'm just thinking of the outcome, yes, I want to have a goal. But if I'm already going in someplace with an outcome, like you were saying when you went to that beautiful yoga retreat where you met all these people and you had everything on your list, but then you were like, you know what? I'm going to go in here now because I'm being called. I'm going to break my little schedule and I'm going to follow my intuition because my intuition knows. How can people work with you and where can they find you?
So I have a free app in the App Store and the Google Play Store. It's called ALLTRUEistic, as we talked about in the very beginning. And it's a place that you can go in and you can do exactly what the stories I've just shared, where I write it out and I go and meditate for it. So you can enhance your own life in that exact same way. I put that practice and that tool into an app so that you can have the experience anywhere that you are. So for instance, if you were in the morning meditating for abundance, but then throughout the day, you're returning to lack, you have a tool to shift you back to that state of abundance super quick. You can actually do it in just 72 seconds. But also in this app, you can intend for somebody else and join others in groups. So somebody, like I said, on their healing journey or their own business that they're getting going. But you can also join our collective intentions for things like world peace or for a more evolved future for humanity. So the app is in the App Store. We have our full launch. We did a soft launch on it a couple of months ago. We have about 1,000 active users in it right now. And we're finally doing our full launch April 23rd. So all features and the full launch is coming up soon.
That's amazing. If somebody wants
Thank
to
you
work,
for asking.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to have all the information in the description as well. If somebody wants to go deeper into the work with you, can they? And how would they be able to contact you?
So I don't offer coaching programs because the app that I built is really a community. So I like to assist other people that are experts, that are beautiful coaches, and direct people to their work. So within the app, it's not my voice or my teaching. It comes from my experience because my experience validates what I built. I built it based on my experience and my research. But I also want to give other people the voice in the app to have a platform that they can work with their clients as a tool for them. So I really built a tool instead of independently coaching people. If anyone does want to work with me directly or has any questions, I'm sure my email will be in my bio, and I'm happy to answer a question or direct them to a resource that I might have that might be more available for them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing so much information and advice on better your life and your circumstances and really live the life you were always meant to live.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for you, so grateful for this beautiful conversation and for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'll talk to you very soon. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And if you would like to get in touch with Tiffany, all the information is in the description below. Definitely reach out to her and check out the app, which is such a fantastic tool for us to be able to meditate, to manifest, and create the abundance we all meant to experience in our lifetime. And also check out the other episodes. Make sure that you hit the like button, that you share this episode with someone who may get something out of it. And as always, check out my links. And if you're interested in the Declutter program, go to pinkstarmusic.com and you will find all the goodies in there. I appreciate you guys for being here, for sharing this, and for listening. And I hope you really enjoyed this one. I always love to hear from you. So if you would like to leave a review, do so. And I will see you in the next episode.
Speak, break the silence, pray for the broken, peace for the ruthless, and deeper find your way back home. Hear the calling, echoing from within. Bottle of emotions bursting into flames. Hear the calling, echoing from within. Rise from the ashes, we shall rise again. Stop all the fire, blood, tears and light. Love is forgiveness. Free yourself, free yourself, free yourself. Hear the calling, echoing from within. Bottle of emotions bursting into flames. Hear the calling, echoing from within. Rise from the ashes, we shall rise again. Hear the calling, echoing from within. Bottle of emotions bursting into flames. Hear the calling, echoing from within. Rise from the ashes, we shall rise again. Hear the calling, echoing from within. Rise from the ashes, we shall rise again.